the sixth round of talks. We're still not certain we're about to move on to the negotiations about trade. I mean, do you understand why some people are concerned about an apparent lack of progress?
Well, I can see why people, just coming back to it from time to time. Actually, there's been a huge amount of progress. I mean, the Commission started off saying we want to do this way, and we thought about arguing it, but actually we decided, look, there are things in this which we need answers on ourselves. Citizens' rights being the biggest one. And that one, when we started, there was no knowledge of what was going to happen on citizens' rights. Now we're pretty clear how it's going to turn out. All the 3 million people in Britain today, the million Brits in Europe will have a protection of their current lifestyle, really. That sort of thing alone, let alone the other 3 or 4 things we're dealing with, is a big achievement.
But one of the things that appears that is a sticking point is money. It really is at the heart of all of this, isn't it? And you've got, it appears to me, 2 weeks to come up with some more, according to Michel Barnier.
Well, yeah, in every negotiation, the other side, each side tries to control the timetable. The real deadline on this, of course, is December. It's the December-October Council, which is, I think, about 14th December, thereabouts. But your readers, your viewers, are all taxpayers, I suspect, one way or another, and they would not want me to just come along and just give away billions of pounds. So we've been very, very careful, and it's taking time, and we will take our time to get to the right answer. But
the simple fact is, until there is an agreement on the figure from both sides, we aren't going to move towards those trade talks.
Well, no, that isn't the case. I mean, they've used this phrase, they invented this phrase, sufficient progress, right? It's in, as it were, in their control what it really is. But one of the reasons they did it was because we said, all right, we'll do this sequencing, but don't imagine you'll have a number or a formula at the end of it. We'll get towards that process, but you won't have a number or formula before we move on to the next stage. They accepted that. So that it's not to be expected suddenly we're going to come along and say, here's another 5 billion or whatever.
But to move on to phase 2, I mean, it's not within your gift, is it? It's within theirs.
Well, it's both, of course, but yeah, the 27 will make their decision whether or not to move on. That's right.
Do you concede in the same way that the Chancellor has done that this uncertainty, and businesses are looking for details about the transition period, businesses are looking for details as to the final deal, that this uncertainty is having an effect on the economy?
Well, it has. Of course it does. Of course it does. I mean, we've got a 2-year negotiation going on, But the businesses we're talking about, I mean, I was a director of a FTSE 100 business, actually 2 of them at various times. I know quite what it's like. You don't have absolute certainty in business. And if you're in business, you know that when you start a negotiation, you don't know exactly how long it'll last, or indeed what the exact outcome will be. You know where you're going, and what we're doing in this exercise is trying to design this to give the maximum certainty. So that's one of the reasons that we're saying one of the first things, indeed the first thing, we're going to set to resolve in phase 2, as soon as it starts, is the implementation period or transition period. Yeah? What that will do is give businesses 2 years to plan, or thereabouts, when we get to the end. So they'll be able to make a plan on the basis of certainty. So that's designed specifically to give certainty.
But isn't it the case that actually, you mentioned there, you never know how long the negotiating process will last, but we do, don't we? We have a date at which we will be coming out of the European Union.
We know that. We know the end
Whether or not we have a deal is down to you and them.
We know the end stop. We know when we're aiming for, which is the sort of latter part of next year, autumn 2018. Both sides want to hit that sort of target. So, we have a broad idea. But in terms of what the outcome will be exactly, in any business, in any even remotely complex business negotiation, even if you go buy a house, you don't know when you start whether you're going to end up with the carpets and curtains, what the exact price will be, etc., etc. And this is taking 40 years of law, 40 years of relationship, and turning it into what we hope is an infinite period of friendship. So that's a complex thing to do. The most complex negotiation probably in history. And so, people will be unreasonable to expect absolute certainty from day one.
Given all of that, why then won't you countenance any set of circumstances in which Article 50 could be paused to increase the amount of time available for the negotiations?
Well, you just said, businesses are looking for certainty. They want another uncertainty, extending the thing into the future. Also, in order to pause it, not pause it, in order to extend it by a year, let alone pause it, I'm not sure you can pause it, but even to extend it by a year takes unanimity of all the other 27. What do you think the price of that would be? When you require unanimity from 27 countries, I can tell you it'd be very expensive.
I thought they weren't trying to punish us. I thought they wanted us to have a good deal out of all of it.
Listen, in a European negotiation, very often you find one country will hold it to get something it particularly wants. If you say 27 countries, well, we'd like another year, thank you, one of them will put a price on it, at least, if not 27 of them.
If we do move on to phase 2, and that is not yet certain, you've got around about 10 months to work out, as you say, the most complicated trade deal in our nation's history. The European Union doesn't appear to think it can be done, so why do you?
Well, because it'll be, two overarching reasons. Number one, we're starting from the same place. Most trade deals, if we did a trade deal with America, we'd be looking at the standards of the products we're selling to each other, all that sort of stuff. With the European Union, they're the same. We have exactly the same standards on the day we leave. So you're actually controlling divergence rather than convergence. So you've got an instant couple of years saved out of that. The second thing is that what we're looking for is actually very simple at one level. And that is we want a no tariff, a tariff-free deal, which then allows us to have a very simple customs agreement. Those things make it simpler, make it easier to do quickly.
Can we just talk for a second about the possibility of no deal? And of course, you're not working towards that, you're working towards a deal, but it remains a possibility, and I'd submit perhaps more of a possibility than ever before. I mean, if a deal is not struck, would that represent a personal failure?
Well, no, two things. Firstly, I mean, you're right, it's not what we're aiming for. Secondly, I won't accept that it's more probable than it's ever been before. The mood.
The closer we get to the December meeting of the European Council, clearly it's more of a possibility.
We could have this interview every 3 months for the next 2 years, and there'll be cycles in the time. People get more tense and less tense. That's how negotiations advance, by pressure on each side. But understand, one of the parts of my job, third to half of my job in a way, is planning for every outcome. And we have a huge planning operation for every outcome. And we will be ready if that happens. It's not what we want, because the trade deal that we're talking about, but it's not just trade, security, foreign affairs, defence, all those deals are much better than no deal.
But let's just examine what could happen in the event of a no deal. If Brexit means Brexit, if no deal means no deal, the day after we come out of the European Union, there could be knock-on effects to our policing. You have to be a member of the European Union to be part of Europol, Euratom as well. There could be real significant consequences for our health service. Aviation, let's be clear about it, the day after we come out, planes might not fly.
Well, that's what I've heard said, but it's not the case. Look, let's just take one country. I mean, just because you've got 27 countries who've got an interest in this too, not just us. Mm-hmm. Let's take Spain. What would happen if suddenly there was a disruption of flights between Britain and Spain? You've got a huge industry, tourist industry dependent on it. You've got a huge property market.
I'm not talking about the rationale for it, just the simple legality of it all.
Well, with great respect, the rationale is important. The incentive is important. We will be, if we're at this point with no deal, we'll know it's coming for a while. And we'll take measures to make sure that what you're describing doesn't happen.
But that's on top of 10 months to negotiate the trade deal, isn't it?
Which is why I've talked about at various times a bare bones deal or a minimalist deal, because we don't want that either, frankly. But don't assume that we haven't thought through the end contingencies of this. We have. There will not be a circumstance where aircraft won't fly. There will not be a circumstance where we can't exchange data with the European institutions. There will not be those sorts of failures that people are fearing. We'll make sure that doesn't happen.
But what of the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland? I mean, clearly if there is no deal, there are two options. One, there is a hard border. Two, Northern Ireland remains in the customs union.
No, one of the things we have to understand is that we've been talking about unique solutions for Northern Ireland. Now, we're looking for a unique solution in the event that that we have a deal. But even today, I think Mr. Varadkar, or in the last day or so, Mr. Varadkar has accepted that staying inside the customs union is not a real option. It wouldn't be a real option for a large part of the community in Northern Ireland, and that's the first interest we have.
So that all means a hard border then?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I think we'll find other ways around that. Look, at the moment,
tell me what they are.
Let me just say this to you. Currently, there are differences in excise rates and so on, north and south of the border. You know, they exist there now, right? That's the first thing to understand. The second thing, the most fundamental aspect of the border, the free movement of people across that border, is not underpinned by the European Union. It's underpinned by the common travel area for us. That's been there since 1923, and it will be there probably in 2123.
We've learned today that the European Union is actively planning for a future, a situation in which Theresa May is not Prime Minister. Have you given any thought to that?
I think I would be very surprised if they really are. I know it was in the papers. I'd be very surprised if they really are playing that. The Prime Minister will be here right through Brexit and, to my retirement, as it were, till the end of Brexit. And she'll be my boss for that. I'm quite certain of it.
But you can't not concede the fact that there is a chaotic quality to government at the moment. You've lost 2 Secretaries of State. You've got the Foreign Secretary potentially adding years to the sentence of a British national whose release they were trying to secure. OK, on the topic of Mr Johnson, is he unsackable?
Why would you want to sack him? He's a good foreign secretary. I mean, look, the thing to understand here, you've got a sort of a flurry at the moment of things happening in politics, but this happens to all governments at some point or another.
Towards the end of their lifespan, mostly.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I suggest you have a look at Churchill's government in the early 1940s before he went on to great success, won the war. Or other ones. I served in John Major's government for a long while, and we had flurries there, to say the least. But there's been and Tony Blair's had flurries, and actually David Cameron's had flurries. So all of them have issues that come up and go. That's the nature of politics. It's one of the things that makes it exciting, of course, but it is the nature of politics. The trick in it all is to keep your eye on what you're supposed to achieve. And my task, my job, is I'm immodest enough to think it's important, and I'm very focused on that and not on anything else.
Another aspect that you have to deal with as a politician within politics is satire. You've been referred to by some as the Brexit bulldog. What do you make of that?
Well, of all my colleagues, I've never heard it actually, but all my colleagues in the
very
House
funny.
Tell me I ought to listen. They tell me it's very funny. They tell me it's very good, and they tell me actually it's quite kind. So there we are. That's more than you can normally ask for.
Indeed. David Davis, many thanks.
Thank you.
And with that, almost time for us both to pack up and head for home, but not before another candid moment with one of politics' great survivors.
But are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah. I mean, look, there are bits of it which are irritating, bits which great, but it matters. You can say to yourself when you work from 3 till 12, 3 in the morning, 12 at night, actually it matters. And when you say that, everything just gets light.
Will the smile ever leave the Secretary of State's face? It's certainly difficult to imagine. This is a politician clearly revelling in the task at hand, but it's a task that's far from complete.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.